This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are back for another edition of the Primetime Podcast right here on Most Valuable Podcast, talking a little college football, talking a little college basketball. Got a jam-packed show because we got both, Brandon. Talking college basketball because John Beilein could be making a beeline right out of college. See what I did there? Making a beeline right out of college basketball to the NBA. Him might be the head coach of the Detroit Pistons. Then we're going to look at the NBA draft, taking a look at Grayson Allen. I had to think about it because all day I've been saying Grayson Young, and I have no idea why. But we're going to see how high he should be drafted in the NBA draft. Then we're going to go into college football and talk about Florida State. DeAndre Francois, should he be starting this year? What should FSU do in Willie Taggart's first season as head coach of the Seminoles? But before we get into everything, a little bit of housekeeping here. Number one, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. That's where you help support the channel. You can also come on a podcast each and every month. You're at the $10 tier, so check that link down below in the description, also in the description, or at mostvaluablepodcast.com. You can check out our store, get yourself an MVP t-shirt, and also on mostvaluablepodcast.com, you can check out everything for MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, make sure to go on Apple Podcasts and Apple iTunes, give the Primetime Podcast a 5-star rating, and then type a little something about why people should check it out. It'd be much appreciated by both Brandon and myself. But Brandon, let's jump into everything, and we're going to start with John Beilein, because before the weekend, it came out, you know what? John is interviewing with the Pistons, and I looked at my phone, and I saw it, and I went, ooh, this could be pretty damaging for Michigan. Not really for John Beilein, but for the Michigan program. We're going to look at that probably at the end, but the thing I want to ask you, just plain and simple to start this, should John Beilein leave Michigan for the Pistons?
I don't necessarily think so. And part of that is because what John Beilein's doing with Michigan, clearly what we saw by this past season, I think they had the most wins that they've ever had with 33, at least under him. They showed that they're a good team, a competitive team in the Big Ten, and a team that can compete with some of the other big programs even outside of the Big Ten and the big teams, that everyone is always talking about and everything like that. And I think that the way that they now always come tournament time, you're going to need a little bit of luck, and they certainly got that. I mean, we all remember the game against Houston where they won it right at the end at the buzzer. And there's always going to be that type of excitement and stuff in games, and it could have gone either way. But this Michigan team, that they had a lot of really good pieces, and it's because John Beilein knows how to put a team together that way, and the way that he runs his offense is kind of spread the floor with some really good skill shooters and be able to kind of hurt you that way. I just don't think that you go for him. For him, it doesn't necessarily make sense to me, because I don't really think that he'd be going for a bigger payday. That wouldn't necessarily. I don't want to say that it wouldn't make sense, because of course if you can get more money then you do that, but it wouldn't make sense the way that he's doing it.
The only thing I want to throw out about that,
sure,
and this is the other side of it, yeah, you're going to make more money with the Pistons because NBA teams will pay more than Michigan teams, but because of where we're at now, and I'll let you read the Woj bomb that basically he dropped, I'm going to call it a Woj bomb, that he dropped before we were recording about Beilein. The thing that he can use now with this tweet coming out is basically, you know what? I did this. I got this far. When my contract comes up, or before my contract comes up, maybe Michigan might have to pony up a little more dough to keep me around at Michigan, because you know what? I can leave for the NBA whenever I want.
So reading an article earlier, they brought up that point, and they brought up how for Michigan last year, I believe it was a softball coach, that they were in talks and it wasn't going anywhere, took a long time, and eventually something got done, but them going and interviewing at any other place wasn't going to help them get more money from Michigan, which is they were talking about that this wouldn't be the way to go about trying to do that, because Michigan still may not pony up any more money just because you're going to do that. I guess I think what really intrigues me, number one, is the fact that you had a couple of weeks ago conversation with Michigan AD to talk about this contract. And after that conversation, you say, basically, be on the lookout, something's coming. Well, it's been 3 weeks since that conversation, and there's nothing here yet.
Yeah.
Nothing has been signed. No contract is ready. There's nothing. So the fact that you're going out and you're looking, and as this article that I read earlier too, that says, if you go out and you're looking, you're obviously looking because you think that you could get a better job. But my question to that would be, are the Detroit Pistons a team in the East that's a like, what were they, 9th place team in the East this year?
They would have been the 12th pick, I believe, in the draft.
And if
they didn't trade to the Clippers.
And that was with a 39-43 record or something like that.
They were bad.
You're not good. You're under 500. Why would you leave a successful program that you're building at Michigan, that you built and are still building on, to leave them for an NBA team that's nowhere near necessarily being competitive?
This is where I was going to jump in with the reason why I don't think it's the former of what I mentioned with the, hey, I'm going to do this to try to get more money out of Michigan, is because Beilein's been there since 2007. Yes, he's been to 2 national championships, lost them both. I think the first one was to Louisville, then this last one to Villanova-Hova. But the thing why I feel like this is for real when it comes to John Beilein is this could be the perfect opportunity for him, because I don't think John Beilein cares that he's going to I'm going to be nice and say subpar team in the Detroit Pistons. The thing you got to think about is, like, I'll use an example. Everyone right now, down 2-0, is talking about LeBron James. Where's he going to go? Where's he going to go? Is he going to Houston? Is he going to Philadelphia? And the thing that NBA players or former NBA players bring up in these segments on ESPN, Fox News, everything, is the only way they can see him staying in Cleveland is basically, oh, does he want to uproot his family? Does he want to uproot his kids, or does he want him to go to the same high school he did in Akron, Ohio? Well, if we take that and apply it to this, I'm looking Ann Arbor on Google Maps at right now, if we took a drive from Ann Arbor to Detroit, 43 minutes. So it's not that long of a commute from, and I'm not saying that John Beilein's in Ann Arbor. He could be around the area. It's a close drive to Detroit. Doesn't have to move his family, doesn't have to shake up his life. He can keep that the same and make the jump to the NBA. And the thing that I think of is a lot of people will say, well, college coaches have not been successful in the NBA. But here, I'm going to give you one, and this is where I think John Beilein falls in, is one thing that people have said, is John Beilein known as a phenomenal recruiter, like I'll say a Calipari type recruiter, where he's bringing in big names left and right? No. He's been a guy, I'm going to recruit the smaller guys and then coach them up. Who knew when he was coming into college who Abdul Rahman was? Nobody. Who probably knew who Mo Wagner was? Nobody, unless you covered recruiting really deep and cared about recruiting really deep, because I know there's a pocket of people out there that follow recruiting every pulse every day. But the thing I'm going at is I compare it almost to Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens at Butler, probably because he was at Butler, and most people, unless you're a huge college basketball fan, couldn't find Butler on a map if you told them to. Go up to a random person on the street, show them a map of the United States, say, find Butler. They wouldn't be able to go, oh, it's in Indianapolis. They just wouldn't be able to. But he was able to bring in the guys he brought in and coach that team up to a national championship appearance. Was able to coach them up not just to 1, but 2 national championship appearances, much like John Beilein. That's why I'm kind of thinking, and maybe this is because we've seen it already, a coach like that who has coached subpar players compared to like the Kentuckys and everything up to a national championship Well, Brad Stevens is able to do that in Boston, but Boston, the thing that they have that Detroit doesn't have is they had Danny Ainge, and Danny Ainge helped Brad Stevens by getting him young talent like Jaylen Brown, like Terry Rozier, like Jason Tatum, guys that could work better with a Brad Stevens and then give you a Gordon Hayward and a Kyrie, although they were injured this year. I feel like that will be the closer mold or the closer way we would look at John Beilein in the NBA compared to those other ones that we feel like they're failing. I'm not saying he'd go to the Eastern Conference Finals, but I think he would have some sort of success in the NBA.
So you look at some of the recent guys who've gone to the NBA. Fred Hoiberg, one of the recent guys, he has not had success with the Chicago Bulls.
Bulls are a dumpster fire.
This last season was so bad. 27 and 55. Billy Donovan with OKC. He's done well. He's had success, but still not to the point that they want to be. They can't get over that hump.
Yeah.
Brad Stevens has done well. He's done well with Boston. You look at guys, though, in the past. Lon Kruger, he didn't do well with Illinois. You've got Calipari. Where was he again when he was in the NBA? He didn't do well either. I mean, two guys I think
Rick Pitino.
I don't think that they ever made the playoffs. I don't think Pitino had any playoff appearances with the team that he was with.
Pitino, I think, was Boston.
And here's a worry that if John Beilein went to the NBA, and let me get this.
By the way, New Jersey was Calipari, the New Jersey Nets.
Let me get this tweet out of the way from Woj. So he says, Detroit is interested in further conversations with former Toronto coach Dwayne Casey and Michigan coach John Beilein on Pistons head coaching job, league sources tell ESPN. Both coaches have met with the front offices already. So my whole thing is that do they want to go with a guy who what he coaches is fundamentals? What he coaches is fundamentals. And if you go to the NBA, they think, yeah, we've got that down already. We're not fundamental. We don't need I don't want to say they don't need the fundamentals, but they're past that. We're not kids where we need to, practice our passing. But a guy like Steve Kerr, who when he came in, he had never coached anywhere before. The Warriors were his first coaching gig, and God really looked out for him because he said, I like you to have immediate success. And that's what he had. But he started with fundamentals.
Well, that's Brad Stevens the same way.
Starting with fundamentals of, hey, make sure you have the right pass so that your guy's not fumbling with it and he can, spot up and have a good jumper. So all those types of things are important, but is he going to be received well by the players in the NBA? Not because of anything else, but because of if that's his coaching style where he's trying to get at fundamentals, he's going to be received well by college players, of course, because they're still progressing. They're still trying to change some things and grow into themselves and everything like that. NBA players are grown men for the most part. Actually, for the whole part. I mean, even if you are whatever age you are, 20, you're in the NBA, you're a man. But I think that
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Is that going to be something that maybe NBA players, like a guy like a Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond, who are currently with Detroit, are they gonna take well to that? Or would they be like, no, we need to do more? We're struggling. We need to do more than just fundamentals. Or would they say maybe we just need to go back to the fundamentals?
I mean, really, the two that kind of speak to me is there's three that kind of speak to me veteran-wise on the Pistons. And that's Reggie Jackson, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Drummond, because the only thing that they all have in common is they're the oldest veterans on this team.
Yeah.
You look at the rest of this team, Luke Kennard is a young kid.
Yes, he is.
You got Stan Johnson, the Manimal, is a younger kid. He's 22, although you call him a man. I would say 22 is young for NBA career because you don't hit your prime until 27, 28.
Young, but are you still a man? You're in the NBA
you're a
league.
Man,
you're a man to be playing in the NBA. That's what I'm saying. You may be a young man, but you're still a man.
NBA age 22 is young, and then you also have Henry Ellison, who's still a young kid in his NBA career. And I mean, kid's the wrong word; they're men, but I mean, like you said, young man. The thing I like most about Beilein, and this is Michigan fans will probably hate this because I am on the camp. Back to the original question, should he go to Detroit? Yeah, if I was John Beilein, I'd be making a beeline to Detroit. That's exactly. I'm going to use that joke.
Yeah, you love
until
it. You
I
love
just
it. I can
milk
tell you
everything
really
out
like
of it.
that a lot.
But I would be going to Detroit because I feel like he'll have success in Detroit because he's not like he's had jobs everywhere. He hasn't just been in Michigan the entire time, I don't believe. But I'm going to look up really quickly if he was, let's see, where was he born? So he's a New York guy. So he's not a Michigan guy. I mean, New York being that's where he was born, that's where he was raised. But he's been in Michigan since 2007. If you lived somewhere for a decade, I feel like you would have soaked in what it means to be that kind of a guy. He's a Michigan guy, and being close to Detroit can have that same kind of, hey, I'm coming into this job. Ann Arbor is close enough to Detroit. I'm the Detroit area. I'm the right coach for this job. And I love the fact that he's a fundamental guy. Another thing, I was reading an article, and they mentioned the point of like, oh, he's not a guy that's known for being a strong recruiter, but he is a coach that I'm going to make those changes mid-game. And to me, if I was a front office, that's what I would want. A guy that can work with young kids, because really, when you look at this landscape in the NBA, the Warriors did it. Boston has done it, although they got lucky because the Cavs gave them a gift in Kyrie Irving. But how do you build? You build through the draft. Steph Curry was drafted. Klay Thompson was drafted. Draymond Green was drafted. Yeah, they got KD through free agency, but that team, that championship team, was already built through the draft. Jason Tatum was drafted. Terry Rozier was drafted. Jaylen Brown was drafted. Built through the draft, that main young core. Detroit can do the same thing with John Beilein, and I would like a coach that's already like, hey, you know what? I know that first half wasn't good. Be a guy to preach the fundamentals, always be reminding his guys about those fundamentals, but then also be the coach to say, all right, we need to make this game plan change. We need to do this in the second half. And be that coach to make changes. Because I'm watching the playoffs now, Brandon, and the biggest thing in most games is who makes the halftime adjustment. Who makes it? The Celtics were good at that, especially at home. There's a reason why the Warriors come out of the gate in the third quarter like gangbusters, because they make that halftime adjustment, or they just turn it on, one of the two. But that is what I would want from my coach. Should he? I would say yes. But he doesn't have to, because Michigan is still, I would say, a cushy job for him because he's got a contract through 2021, and I don't see him getting fired before that.
I would say I would say no. I would say don't do it, because what we continue to kind of talk about is that he's this fundamentals coach. I think he's going to have greater success in college being able to work with those guys to really develop them, bring them out as much as they can, all their skills and everything like that, and I think help fine-tune that as well as he possibly can before they go to the NBA to be, those NBA players. So that's why I think college is the best spot for him. And according to Sportsbook, they actually list him as the number 3 favorite to get this job. And Dwayne Casey, I think, was number 1.
Do you know who the second guy was?
I don't know why I can't think of his name right now.
Because the thing I'll just say, because Dwayne Casey was in that Woj tweet, the reason why I would pick Beilein over Casey is, yes, Casey's been in the NBA. He's coached the Toronto Raptors. But do you want to bring in a college coach and be like, hey, he could be our version of Brad Stevens? Or would you bring in a coach, yeah, he's brought a team to the number 1 seed, but they keep getting beat by LeBron every single year? So there's that with Dwayne Casey where it's like, yeah, were you really coach of the year this year, or was it Brad Stevens? But also, yeah, you're a good regular season coach, but the playoffs is all that matters. Just getting to the playoffs is what you need.
Well, I'll be honest with you, is that you just said it. Getting to the playoffs is what you need, and right now they don't have it.
Yeah, they don't have it there.
I think going with Dwayne
Building
Casey,
the wall with Stan Van wasn't going to do it.
I think going with Dwayne Casey is the smarter choice. I think it's the smarter choice, the wiser choice, and quite honestly, the safer choice. But and sometimes the safe pick isn't the bad pick. But I think going with Dwayne Casey, because he does have that experience in the NBA, he does have that experience of being able to get to the playoffs and actually get there as a good seed so you know how to be able to win in the regular season. Yes, you need to still improve on what you're able to do in the playoffs, but I think that he could improve on that. So I think Dwayne Casey is the right pick. I think John Beilein, his best decision, I think, would be to stay in college. But it'll be really interesting if it comes down to those two guys as the finalists. It'll be really interesting to see what direction they end up going with, and if Beilein ends up accepting the job if it's offered to him, to see what Michigan might do to try and keep him.
Now, here's what I'm going to ask you, is before I throw you a curveball, I want to say one thing, and then I'll throw you my curveball to end it.
You always throw a curveball, and I should already be prepared.
The last thing I want to add is if he went to the NBA, two names that you mentioned were Billy Donovan and Fred Hoiberg, also college coaches that came over. The unique thing about them is, first, Fred Hoiberg, the second year I want to say he was here, he had the whole D-Wade, Jimmy Butler, Rondo being the voice of reason in that locker room, which is insane that Rajon Rondo was the voice of reason, but thank God we had him. He had that full debacle where front office said, we're getting rid of D-Wade, we're trading Jimmy Butler, we're letting Rajon Rondo go. Then this year he had marketing, but he had the issues with Bobby Portis and Nico. That team's a mess. That front office is a mess.
Yeah, so you also have a terribly weak front office.
I don't think it's all on, in that case, Fred Hoiberg. It's the front office's crap, too, with fire Garpax from the fans. With Billy Donovan, he had the whole, I'm doing well because I have KD and Russ, and KD's in Golden State. And then he had to deal with making Russ happy. Then this year had to deal with PG-13 and Melo, and he got an extension. But those situations have been vastly different because for Billy Donovan, it's been the situation. Fred Hoiberg, it's been the front office.
But can I say, though, is that those are things that's going to happen as a head coach that you have to work around? I mean, there's always adversity within a season.
I mean,
it doesn't matter.
Brad Stevens.
It doesn't matter how that adversity happens, whether you lose a player, they go down, or you lose everyone that's good, or you're just the Cleveland Cavaliers and you only have one good player
with all your young players.
So I think it's one of those things where it's kind of instilled in you as a coach, or it's not. You either have it where you know how to work around it, and you know how to make the adjustments, and you know the people to bring in, and you know the guys to play in the right situations at the right time, or you don't. And I think that I'm not saying that Fred Hoiberg does not. I think Fred Hoiberg would have been much better suited in college. I think he's a college coach. I don't think that he's an NBA coach. He's a nice guy, but he's not an NBA coach. Billy Donovan, I think, is an NBA coach. He's obviously a great, outstanding college coach, but he's a coach who has showed that he can coach in the NBA. And now a lot of people, and they're already telling me to go screw off, that are Bulls fans, saying that he's got nothing to work with. Yes and no, but I mean, sometimes you have to, try and get creative. But I think that, again, Beilein is one of those guys that he would just thrive more in college. I don't know if we'd ever see him thrive in the NBA.
So here's the curveball I was going to ask you to end this segment before we go on to Grayson Allen. Do you or have you thought about, let's say Beilein makes the beeline for Detroit and he's out of town. Who does Michigan hire? Or who do they go after? Have you thought about that at all?
No, because I don't see Beilein leaving. Now I don't need to think about it.
Let me throw out a name and see what you think, little reaction style. Thad Matta. If John Beilein leaves, I call up Thad Matta.
He's really the only one available. He's one of the only ones available right now. And it makes sense because he knows the conference, he knows the talent.
Ohio State fans would be so angry, and I'd love it.
But he knows the situation. He would probably be one of the best fits in terms of just the Big Ten.
Oh, man, that would feed so much rivalry back into the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry at basketball. I got one other, and this one's if Thad Matta said no. If John Beilein leaves, Thad Matta says no. This is a guy that I believe is interviewing for one of the NBA jobs, but I don't think he's going to get it. He's an assistant with the Miami Heat. He has history with the Michigan program, Juwan Howard. He was with the Fad 5 team. He's been an assistant under Eric Spoelstra since 2013. Yeah, he might want an NBA job, but hey, if he doesn't get one, why not entice him over? The question is with him is how do you feel? Because some people have that stigma with former players being NBA head coaches before they prove themselves.
I feel like that would be a stretch. I feel like on him it would be quite the stretch for Michigan if Beilein were to leave to go and try and get him. I think a guy like Thad Matta would be much more realistic to try and go after.
And those are the two guys that right now I can only think about, because if John Beilein does leave, he's putting the Wolverines in a tough spot. Putting them in a real tough spot, because most of the coaches that were fired or let go, they've already been let go, and they've found jobs somewhere else. But this is where you want. Do you have any final thoughts before I kick it down?
I'm good.
Okay.
I've got it.
This is where you guys come in. Let us know down below. Should John Beilein leave for the Detroit Pistons? What would he be like, and how would he succeed or not succeed as the head coach of the Detroit Pistons? And if he does leave, what happens to the Michigan Wolverines and their basketball program? Who do they hire? Who would you want them to hire? Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section.